Real talk, bugs are terrifying. They outnumber us, they outlast us. And what if they built empires out of devotion, spite, and a war that never truly ended? On Azeroth, one ancient insectoid lineage actually pulled it off. And so, the story begins. Hey, Leora.
Hey, so quick recap. Last episode ended with a bunch of trolls waking up an ancient monster they thought was a god.
This is what crawled out of the dirt while I was gone. Pathetic.
That's about the energy, yeah. Kithix wakes up, looks at troll civilization, decides it's beneath contempt, and immediately starts building an insect army to wipe it out.
Bold opening move for a guy who just woke up from a nap.
A several thousand-year nap, to be fair. But there was one thing he got wrong. As hunters, the trolls were far more dangerous than he realized. The problem was, nothing had prepared the trolls for an enemy like the AQIR.
Because it's bugs.
Because it's bugs. And I want to just pause on that for a second, because, real talk, bugs are terrifying in real life too. They outnumber us by an absurd margin, they survive almost anything, and if one colony gets wiped out, 3 more show up somewhere else. Azeroth just took that anxiety and turned it into an actual civilization.
AQIR. The RPG version of finding one cockroach and realizing there are probably 1,000 you haven't seen yet.
That is exactly the vibe. So the AQIR started rolling through smaller troll tribes, and it was bad. Whole groups falling before they even had a real strategy. And when the swarm got close enough to threaten the Zandalari's home mountains,
They had to organize.
the Zandalari did something genuinely impressive here. They united all the separate troll tribes into one unified force, the Empire of Zul. Everyone puts aside their differences, because the alternative is getting wiped out, one tribe at a time.
And the Zandalari led from the mountains.
Their temple city gave them the high ground, literally. They could see enemy movement coming and direct the other tribes where to strike. And the actual fighting on the ground was mostly guerrilla warfare. Ambushes in the jungle, hit and run, wear the enemy down instead of meeting them head on.
Smart, given they're fighting something that just keeps producing more soldiers.
Exactly the right instinct. And it worked well enough that they pushed the AQIR back before Kivix could properly besiege the mountains. And Kivix itself got hurt badly in the process. The Loa themselves joined the fight directly. Between the trolls and the wild gods, Kivix took real damage and had to retreat northeast to recover.
And this is where the tribe split up to finish the job.
Right, because pushing the AQIR back wasn't good enough. If even a few of them escaped underground, they'd just rebuild and come back later. So the Zandalari sent the more ambitious tribes out to hunt down every remaining pocket, permanently, in exchange for whatever new territory they cleared.
Divide and conquer, with real estate as the incentive.
Basically. The Drukhari went north, into the cold, and ran into something nobody expected, corrupted Tol'vir. The AQIR had gotten their hands on Titan-forged guardians from outside Ulduar and twisted them into these things called obsidian destroyers. Stone warriors, weaponized, nearly overwhelmed the Drukhari. But years of fighting had made them clever, and they found ways to bring the destroyers down.
And somewhere else the Gurubashi went.
Southwest, toward An-Karaj, the prison built over Cthulhu. The AQIR had infiltrated it and enslaved the Anubisath giants guarding it. Early fights were brutal. The Gurubashi lost entire camps. So they changed tactics completely. Instead of big armies, small, mobile raiding groups. Constant harassment, bleeding the AQIR dry over years instead of one decisive battle.
Patience over force.
Which worked. They never fully wiped the AQIR out down there, but they won control of the land. And then, this is the part I actually find kind of moving. There's the Amani.
The ones who went after Kithix directly.
They tracked it all the way to the northeastern woodlands, cutting through wave after wave of Akiri guardians just to reach it. And in the end, the entire tribe threw themselves into one final all-or-nothing attack.
Everything they had.
Almost the whole tribe was lost, but they killed it. Kithix, the Cathraxi general who'd survived Tyr himself, went down to a troll tribe willing to bleed itself nearly to death to make it happen.
That's an enormous cost for one kill.
And the trolls knew it, which is exactly why they built something permanent on that spot to make sure nobody forgot. Right where they killed Kithix, they founded a settlement that would eventually grow into a full temple city.
Zulaman.
If you run that dungeon, that's the Amani's home, and it exists specifically because their ancestors won an almost impossible fight on that exact ground.
I've cleared that place a bunch of times and never once thought about why it was called that.
Most people don't. Anyway, with Kithix gone, the AQIR lost their direction completely. No more coordinated purpose, just scattered colonies fighting for survival. Over the following centuries, the trolls ground the empire down and pushed the survivors into the far north and far south of the continent. Central Kalimdor cleared.
So the trolls won.
The trolls won. But the AQIR who survived didn't just vanish. They settled into new homes, and something strange happened to them over the following ages. They started to change.
Change how?
Depending on where they ended up, they were close to different old gods. And something about that proximity reshaped them, physically and culturally, into 3 completely distinct races.
3 different bug civilizations.
Let's go through them. The group that settled in the far north, close to Yogg-Saron's prison, became the Nerubians. Spider-like, incredibly organized, and they built an actual kingdom, Asjol Nerub.
Spiders near the god of death. Checks out.
Next, the group that ended up in the southwest, inside Ahn'Qiraj itself, right on top of Cthulhu.
The one that's basically a giant eyeball.
That eyeball's presence slowly warped this group into what became the Qiraji. And then the third group, in the southeast, where Yasha'Jaj's essence still lingered in the ground, even after its death.
Right. The heart. The one Ra sealed away.
That group became the Mantid. And this is where the episode actually gets interesting, because the Mantid did something none of the other AQIR descendants ever tried.
What'd they do?
They stopped fighting the trolls entirely. And for an insectoid civilization built on old god worship, that reasoning was not strange at all. It was the point. They believed the old gods would eventually rise again. And they figured the best way to serve that goal wasn't to throw themselves at the trolls and get ground down like everyone else. It was to survive, get stronger, and stay ready.
Patience as a strategy.
Extreme patience. And this is where we meet the Claxi, the Council of Mantid Elders who guarded the Empire's history, culture, and long-term survival. The Claxi didn't care about the trolls. They had a different target in mind. The Mogu, who'd been guarding the Veil of Eternal Blossoms for ages.
Why the Mogu?
Partly territory. The Mantid were drawn to that valley without fully understanding why. Turns out, they were being pulled toward the same thing that was already there. Yasha'Raj's buried heart, sealed beneath the veil by Ra himself. So the Mantid launched a surprise attack on the Mogu guarding it.
Did it work?
Barely didn't. The Mogu held on, pushed them back into the forest. And here's where things get genuinely fascinating, because the Claxi looked at that defeat and didn't see failure.
They lost, though.
They lost the battle, but the survivors came back stronger, tougher, more capable. So the Claxi thought, what if we made that the plan? They waited exactly 100 years, sent a fresh wave of young Mantid against the Mogu, lost again, and the survivors came back stronger again.
Wait. They did this on purpose. Repeatedly.
Every single century, like clockwork. A new Mantid generation attacks the Mogu, gets thinned out, and only the strongest make it back. Do that enough times, and you've built an entire civilization around one guiding principle. Cut away everything weak. Keep only what survives.
That is a genuinely brutal way to run a society.
and extremely effective in a cold, mechanical sort of way. Anyway, the Mogu noticed the mantid getting scarier every century and decided to do something about it before the cycle could reset again. They launched a full assault on the mantid capital itself, timed for exactly the moment the mantid were weakest, decades before the next generation would even hatch.
Catching them completely unprepared.
The Mogu tore through them. Even the toughest veterans from past cycles were being cut down. It looked like it was over. And then one mantid warrior turned the entire battle around.
Who?
Corvin. Armed with blades made from hardened Kaipari amber, he single-handedly ripped through the Mogu ranks and forced their retreat. And he did it so completely that other mantids started genuinely believing he might be unkillable.
One guy.
One guy against an army that was already winning. The Klaxi elevated him, gave him the title Paragon, promised his name would be remembered forever. But Corvin wasn't satisfied with just being a legend.
What did he want?
He knew he'd only been there by chance at exactly the right moment. And he didn't want his people's survival to depend on chance ever again. So he spent years experimenting with Kapari sap, and eventually figured out something remarkable. You could seal a living creature inside amber, and it would stay preserved. Not dead, just paused, for potentially thousands of years.
The mantid version of sci-fi cryosleep. Not frozen in ice, but sealed in amber.
Essentially, yes. And he became the first to test it on himself. They called him Corvin the Prime, the very first paragon, sealed away, ready to be woken up the moment his people needed him again.
That is a genuinely unsettling level of long-term planning for a species that's, what, glorified superbugs.
Never underestimate an insect civilization with patience and a grudge. And through all of this, Raz Mogu kept holding the line at the Veil, loyal to a High Keeper who hadn't been seen in millennia, still believing he'd come back one day. That faith held for centuries.
Held until
the curse of flesh finally caught up with them, too.
And that's where we're picking up next time. What happens to the Mogu once the very thing that's been quietly weakening Titanforged all across Azeroth finally reaches the ones guarding the Veil? Here's the question for this week, though. The Mantid built an entire civilization around one idea. Cut away weakness. Keep only the strongest. Repeat forever. It clearly worked. They survived for thousands of years doing it. So, is that actually a smart way to build a society? Or does something get lost when survival becomes the only value that matters?
If you enjoyed this one, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.
If you're learning English, or if some Warcraft terms felt confusing, tap the video link in the top right. Our vocabulary episode explains useful English expressions from today's story, along with the Warcraft terms we mentioned. See you next time.
See ya.